All right, we're going to go ahead and get started. Happy Tuesday, everybody. This is Dr. Stephanie, your double board certified critical care physician who works with physicians that are struggling with their jobs, burnt out with their careers, or who just want some career advice. Through my books, webinars, coaching, and speaking, I help physicians discover alternative jobs and careers in medicine so that they can practice medicine on their own terms. Welcome to Let's Talk Tuesday. And this special edition of Let's Talk Tuesday is sponsored by Floyd Lee Locums. And today we are going to talk about physician employment contracts and common pitfalls to avoid. And like I said, this is sponsored by Floyd Lee Locums, and you can visit their website at www.floydleelocums.com, and I'll put that website up at the end of the broadcast. So we're going to talk about physician employment contracts and a couple of pitfalls to avoid, and the reason why we're going to talk about this right now is because physicians are always looking for jobs. This is coming to the time in the year in which people are reconsidering their lives, reevaluating their lives, looking over their jobs and seeing whether or not their jobs and their careers are really satisfying. This is coming to the time in training in which a lot of physicians in training, residents and fellows are beginning to think about their employment after their training ends. So I wanted to take a couple of minutes to talk about some major things that are found in employment contracts, how they can have the potential to kind of trip you up, so to say, and then we can talk about how you can use locums to kind of offset these things. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the sign-on bonus. Now, sign-on bonuses can be very tempting, very lucrative, but in some instances, if you don't know what you're getting into, they can end up costing you money. Now, for obvious reasons, being offered a sign-on bonus is just gravy, so to speak. You know, you're already looking at this contract, and then they say, hey, we're offering this sign-on bonus for you, and these sign-on bonuses can be anywhere from $10,000 to $50,000, and it's so cool because after you sign that contract, they will send you a check. And for those of us who are in training, we've been working so hard, and we're finally, see the light at the end of the tunnel to the point where we can begin to make good money and begin to, not just pay off our bills, but begin to enjoy the fruits of our labor. So we kind of can get a little blinded, so to speak, by this sign-on bonus. But it's very important that when you are negotiating your contracts, that you read your contracts and realize that this sign-on bonus is not free money. That if you leave your contract before the terms of your contract, you've got to pay your sign-on bonus back. You may have to pay all of it back. You may have to pay it back on a prorated basis, but you do have to pay your sign-on bonus back if you do not work out your contract. So for example, if you sign a 3-year contract and you leave after year 1, you're going to have to pay back a portion of that sign-on bonus. And the reason why this can cost you money is because they pay you a sign-on bonus. They take taxes out of that sign-on bonus. If you have to pay that sign-on bonus back, you have to pay that sign-on bonus back with after-tax dollars. So you can't just say, well, if I have to pay my sign-on bonus back, I still have, 6 or so months to work since I've given notice or whatever. Can you just take out, can you just withhold from my upcoming wages an amount that would be equal to the amount of the sign-on bonus that I have to pay back? And they'll tell you no, that they can't do that. So you'll have to pay back your sign-on bonus with post-tax dollars, and that's going to cost you money right then and there. So you have to be careful about receiving a sign-on bonus because, like I say, if you do not complete the terms of your contract, you have to pay that money back. Same thing goes with your relocation expenses. I mean, they know if relocating for a job is very expensive, and a lot of times your employers will offer to pay those expenses for you. They'll either pay them up front and pay the moving company and things of that nature, or they'll reimburse you. But as in with the sign-on bonus, if you do not complete the terms of your contract, if you leave before your contract is up, you will have to pay that money back. And I've talked to numerous physicians that have left their jobs before their contracts have been up, and they've had to pay back this money. And I was a physician that had to do that. I was in a job. It was a 3-year contract. I left after 9 months. I got a nice little certified letter from my employer stating, Dr. Freeman, because you've terminated your contract before the end of your contract, you have to pay back this amount of money, and we'll take that in the form of a certified check. So be careful about these types of things, because they may seem like perks, and it may seem like this is great that you finally can catch up financially. But if you leave your jobs before the end of the contract, you may have to pay back some money. Now let's talk about student loan repayment. A lot of places offer student loan repayment, and this is a huge benefit if you can find a job that is going to help you pay back some of these student loans, because Lord knows that some of these student loan payments are the size of a mortgage. But be very, very careful with these arrangements, because these arrangements are very strict. They have a lot of detail, and you must know what you're getting into, especially if you are working for a governmental agency. So if you do not complete the terms of your assignment, not only will you may have to pay back some of the money that they pay towards your loan, but you may not be able to practice medicine, because some of these entities have very strict rules regarding your assignment and your licensure based on completion of the assignment. So before you agree to any student loan repayment plans, benefits, be sure you know exactly what it entails, because regardless of what you do, regardless of what kind of contract you have, there are penalties. There may be penalties for ending the contract early. So, and I don't want to, discourage anybody, but I've talked to more physicians who have left jobs and have been on the hook for $40,000, $50,000, $60,000 to pay back to their employer, or to pay in the terms of malpractice insurance. Because when you are an employed physician, the vast majority of the times, your employer will pay for your malpractice insurance. But you have to figure out, and hopefully this will be in the contract, whether it is a claims-made policy or an occurrence-based policy. If it is a claims-made policy, when you are no longer working for your employer and they terminate that policy, that malpractice policy, you have to have tail coverage. And who pays for tail coverage is something that is very important, whether or not your employer pays for your tail coverage or you pay for your tail coverage. And chances are, if you leave your contract, if you leave your job before working the terms of your contract, you're going to be responsible for paying your own tail coverage. And depending on your specialty and the length of time you've been in practice, it can be very expensive. I've had to pay tail coverage of like $7,000. I know people have had to pay 10. I've talked to surgeons that have had to pay $30,000 to purchase tail coverage. I've talked to an OBGYN who's had to pay $80,000 to purchase tail coverage. So this is very important, because there are so many things in these employment contracts that you don't know that will cost you money at the end of the contract. So therefore, it is very important that you look at all of these opportunities, all of these terms of the contract, because walking away from a job is not as easy as some people would lead you to believe. Now, let's talk about some other employment clauses that can be not in the best interest of the physician. Most employment contracts have a no-compete clause, also known as a restrictive covenant. And that means that for a certain amount of time after you no longer work for your employer, that you cannot practice medicine in a certain radius. So it can be, a 2-mile radius, 10-mile radius, 15-mile radius, 50-mile radius, typically for 2 years. And you have to be careful because a lot of contracts state that the no compete clause is not just where you worked, that it applies to any of your organization's properties or clinics or hospitals. So depending on the exact language of the no compete clause and the radius of the no compete clause, you may have to totally relocate towns and portions of states in order to not be in violation of this restrictive covenant. So that is something that is huge that you have to make sure you are aware of. A lot of employers, not just academic employers, are now including what they call intellectual property clauses. So what this means is that they don't want you doing anything outside of your job, even if it's on your own time. And even if you do something outside of your job on your own time, they want the intellectual rights to that, and they want the money that you generate from that. So what does this mean? Let's say you work as an internal medicine doctor for a large academic center, and they have an intellectual property clause that you weren't aware of, but you write fiction novels in your spare time, and you happen to write a novel while you were employed with this organization, and your novel is doing quite well. They can very well come back and say, hey, you wrote this while you were working for us. Therefore, we have rights to your intellectual property, and we want the money from it too. So you really have to be careful because a lot of employment contracts restrict what you can do on your off time, and they want the financial rights to it, and they want the intellectual property rights to that as well too. So you have to be very aware of these things that are in these contracts. So let me just, a couple of more people have joined. So I want to just kind of go back really quickly and talk about some of the things that you have to be aware of. Some things that are going to cost you money on the back end of your contract. Sign-on bonuses have to be repaid if you don't complete your contract. Relocation expenses have to be repaid if you don't complete your contract. Student loan repayment, very strict terms, very large penalties, dire consequences if you do not adhere to the terms of that contract. This is something that I forgot to mention. Some employers will pay stipends to you while you're still in training in exchange for you signing a contract and working for them once your training is finished. However, if you do not sign a contract with them, if you sign a contract and do not complete the terms of your contract, that stipend money has to be paid back. And once again, you're paying back pre-tax money with post-tax dollars. And I know a physician who was in this situation. He was a radiologist, worked for a hospital. They paid his stipend all while he was in training, and then the hospital downsized, got rid of some of the people in his department. His job got downsized, and they were like, we're sorry, but you're still going to have to pay this money back. And they told him that he was going to have to pay this money back in the forms of a check that he wrote to them, and that they could not withhold his future wages to pay this back. So the thing is, you have to be careful of these stipends that a lot of places may be offering you during your training, because if for whatever reason you cannot complete the terms of your employment contract, you have to pay that money back. And like I said, whatever money you have to pay back to your employer is money that has to be paid back in after-tax dollars. So this is taking, you're taking a huge financial hit for this. So, like I said, for the above things, all of these things must be repaid, usually have to be repaid if you don't complete the terms of your contract. And that is why it is so important that you know exactly what your contract states. Going back to this malpractice insurance thing, a lot of young physicians are not aware of the type of malpractice policy they are covered under. And so when they leave their job, they have a huge surprise when they find out that they have to purchase their tail policy, and they're looking at having to, spend 15, 20, $30,000 that they haven't budgeted for. Once again, I've been there and done that. I know people who have been there and done that. And it is a shock when you have to know that you're trying to leave a job, but it's going to cost you $30,000 to walk away. Once again, be aware of this no compete clause, because you're trying to leave a job, you're trying to move on with your life and your career, and your no compete clause is going to tell you where you can work, and you may have to relocate. Beware of something else that is showing up in a lot of employment contracts, not just with academic centers, but a lot of private practices. Intellectual property clauses. They may ask for the rights of anything that you do when you are not at work, but you're still an employee of that organization. So be aware of those types of things. That's very important for those of us who have other outside interests. And you just have to make sure that your current employer is going to allow you to do it, and that they're going to let you keep the compensation for these things. So how do you protect yourself? I mean, I'm not here to scare anybody, but I'm here because I've been through this stuff and I've lived this, and I have left jobs and I have had to pay money because, paying back sign-on bonuses and relocation expenses and having to purchase malpractice tail coverage. So I want you all to be very aware of what is out there for you, so that you'll know what to expect and how to anticipate it. So how do you protect yourself when you are looking for physician employment and you're thinking about signing this contract? A couple of things you need to do. First of all, you need to take your time. You need to take your time. Don't sign the first contract that comes your way. And I know it's so hard, guys. I know, especially when you're in training and you're just tired and you want to start living the good life as an attending, and you just want to stop having to be on a budget, and you really want to start making good money. And it's so easy just to be blinded by that salary and the vacation. But I'm telling you, take your time. Get multiple job offers, get multiple contracts. Do not be in a rush, because every time I've made a decision out of desperation and haste, I've come to regret it. Second thing you have to do is read your contract. I know this goes without saying, but you would be surprised at the number of physicians who do not read their entire contract. We are so focused on salary and vacation and maybe some CME stuff that we don't read the entire contract. And we have no idea about how our salary is based, whether or not it's a salary, a straight salary, or it's production based. Is it production based on your number of RVUs, or just what? We have no idea about our no compete clause and our termination clause, and what kind of insurance we have, and all of this kind of stuff. So many physicians have never read their contracts before. And so then when they're trying to leave a job, or then when their salaries get adjusted, or then when the boss comes knocking and say, you know what? We heard that you were doing some public speaking and we prohibit that. We act like we're surprised because we didn't read our job, we didn't read our contract, and we didn't read the employee handbooks. So take your time when looking for a job. Take your time when reading through these contracts. Read your contracts, and the most important thing you can do is to hire a lawyer, and not just any lawyer, not just your cousin or your neighbor that went to law school. You have to hire a lawyer who is an expert in physician employment and in healthcare law, because the things that apply to us don't apply to other people. So hire a lawyer. And y'all, this is not the time to be cheap. This is not the time to look for a discount. This is not the time to nickel and dime. Because like a good friend of mine, Dr. Bonnie Simpson Mason, says in her courses, and it makes a lot of sense, she says, when you look at your contract, over the life of a contract, if you have a $150,000 contract, that's a 3-year contract. That's almost $500,000 over the life of that contract when you add in your bonuses, when you add in the benefits. So you're being asked to maybe spend $1, $2, or $3,000 for legal fees at the beginning of this contract to have a good lawyer discuss this with you and help you negotiate it. So $3,000 is a drop in the bucket for a contract that's worth almost $500,000 at the end of the contract. Get a lawyer. So take your time, read your contract, and get a lawyer. But there's some of you who are like me who just don't want to be bothered. And that's okay. Some of us, you need to start working. And what happens if you need to start working like now and you don't really have the time to search for a permanent job? You don't really have the time to go on a lot of interviews to see if you're going to really jive with the people, to get a contract, read a contract, hire a lawyer, try to understand all the nuances, and then go back and forth trying to secure a position, sign a good contract, get licensed and credentials. Sometimes you just need some cash. Sometimes you just need to work, and sometimes you really don't want to be bothered. So what happens if you fall into that? So what happens if you fall into that category is that I just need a job. I don't want to be bothered. It's kind of like you just want to date, but you're not ready to get married. And that's perfectly okay. I mean, y'all know what I'm going to say because I'm the locums queen. I'm going to say locums is the perfect thing for you. And why is that? I recommend that everybody, especially my residents and my fellows who are about to start looking for jobs, I recommend that your job search be twofold. I recommend you look for locums, because you can get that pretty quickly, 3 to 6 months. Looking for locums, get some locums lined up while you are looking for your permanent job. And the reason I recommend it is this. When you know you're going to have a source of income come July 1st in the form of a locums job, that takes the pressure off of you from getting a permanent job and getting into something that may cost you money on the back end. Okay. It gives you a sense of relief. Like, okay, I know I'm getting this locums lined up. I know I'm going to have some money coming in July, August, once I finish my training. I know this, so I can take my time before I find a permanent job. So that's why I recommend locums for just people to consider doing that at the same time, because it's a great option, it's a great opportunity. So like I said, work as a locums doctor while looking for a permanent job. And I talk to doctors about doing this all the time. And I know people who have, done locums for a while and then they sign up for a permanent part-time job and it works out for them because there's so many different opportunities, and you don't have to just jump from training to a permanent job, because most of the time your first job is not going to be what you think it is. I was talking to a friend of mine not too long ago, and she finished her residency and took a permanent job, and she's like, whoa, this is not what I thought it was going to be. I need more life work balance. I need to spend more time with my family. So she's looking to transition to another job, but at the same time she's like, I got to figure out how much of this signing bonus I've got to pay back and how she's going to make that transition. So that first job that you have may not be what you thought it was going to be, and it may not be something that you're going to be able to stay in for, the terms of the contract. So just be careful about that, be aware of that, and look at doing locums as an opportunity, as another option. Now, like I said, consider working as a locums while looking for a permanent job. Several benefits of being a locums doctor. First of all, when you're a locums doctor, you work as an independent contractor. So all of this stuff we were talking about, and things to be aware of as a permanent employee, and things to be aware of with a physician employment contract, stuff like your restrictive covenant, that's out the window. Nobody cares about that. You don't have to worry about malpractice insurance. Locums company covers that, and I've never heard of anybody having to purchase tail coverage. So that's not a problem either. In terms of relocation expenses, who cares? Because you're not going to have to actually move to where the locums assignment is. You just travel back and forth, or the locums company will provide short-term or long-term housing. In terms of signing bonuses, I mean, listen, when you work as a locums, you typically get a higher hourly rate than what you get when you work as a permanent doctor. So you can make a larger amount of money in a shorter amount of time, and you can work as much or as little as you want. So if you want to think about making some additional money so you can start knocking off those loan payments, you can do that as a locums doctor, because you can work in multiple places. There's no restriction as to where you work, how you work. So it's so much freedom and flexibility that it gives you options and opportunities, so that you don't really have to feel like you're stuck to go down this one road when you have other opportunities and other options. So you're working as an independent contractor, you get a higher hourly rate, and you have flexibility and control. So those are the ways that you can kind of use locums to kind of offset some of the pitfalls that I like to say of permanent physician employment. And I don't want anybody to think that I'm against permanent employment, but what I want us all to do is to realize what these contracts have, what these contracts say, and to be in a position that we can take our time and find the right position for us. And you can use locums to do that. Or you can be like me and just do locums full time. And I am meeting more and more physicians who are doing that and are doing quite well. So my whole thing is, I just want you all to have options. I want you all to make informed decisions, because knowledge truly is power. And for those of you, and I hope everybody watches, everybody who's watching this broadcast, who is interested in locums, I hope you will consider locums if you've never thought about it. And you definitely have to go to FloydLeeLocums.com, because they are a locums company unlike any other locums company that is out there, because they offer special concierge type locum services, which means that they take a special interest in their physicians, and they will help walk you through the whole process, listen to your concerns, but also provide additional services that you may need to help make doing locums more viable option for you. So once again, www.FloydLeeLocums.com. This was Dr. Stephanie. Thank you for joining me on Let's Talk Tuesday. I will see you next time, and goodbye and happy Thanksgiving.